Part 1. My name's Martha Lane. Folks here in Ash Meadow call me Miss Martha or just Lane. I'm 78, keep paper where other people keep prayers, and I don't embroider. Here's the ledger of how a dying woman tried to run my life from the grave and how my father cut the wire. I was 13 in Timberfall, Oregon, winter of '59. Our house sat past the mill road, where trucks rattled the guardrail and pine pitch glued your hair. Mother, Dolores Hart before she married, taught first grade like a drill sergeant. Father, Samuel, foreman at Greenridge Mill, soft voice, hard hands, the kind of man who apologized to fence posts when he brushed them. Illness found Mother and liked the place. The cough started in November. By December, it carried thread-like red. By January, it made the windows shiver. Dr. Warren Collins came after dark with a leather bag and a smell like bitter licorice. He whispered. She ordered. He wrote on a pad. She crossed things out and told him what to bring next. Cousin Ruthie arrived with 2 suitcases and a talent for closing doors I was about to walk through. House rules didn't change. They sharpened. Wake at 5. Water cold. Bed tight. Voice small. Meals quiet. Forks only. Not words. Father would meet my eye like a man tossing me a rope he wasn't allowed to name. The first sign of the plan slid under a door I was sweeping. Mother's voice, thin but clean. After I go, Victor takes her. Joseph keeps the house and the family. Victor, her brother, drove a church Buick and a temper. He started showing up every Thursday with hair oiled flat and eyes that stuck to things too long. He thumbed a silver lighter at the table while Mother spoke like a judge, and Father didn't speak at all. Tickets came next. I know the weight of paper. Father ironed his Sunday coat and stitched something in the hem so careful the thread didn't show on the outside. That night the wardrobe smelled like camphor and worry. Ruthie noticed the coat moved funny. She was quick with secrets if you paid in thanks. She told Mother. Mother called Father in, grabbed his wrist, made him say, "I will," to something I couldn't hear. He nodded like a man borrowing hours. 2 days later, Dr. Collins brought ampules with white labels. Ruthie washed the good teacups. Victor leaned in the doorway with a hymn book face. Mother gave orders from pillows. "Joseph, fetch the girl." He fetched me. "Stand there," she said, and tapped the quilt like a gavel. "Listen." She told it plain. After she died, I would marry Victor, to keep you obedient and decent. And Father would sign what she'd written, and the house would never leave Hart blood. It wasn't a suggestion. Victor smiled with half a tooth. Ruthie looked at the floor. Father's hands shook, so the lamp shook. "No," I said. That was all. Victor crossed the room with a hand raised. Father moved between. The lamp rocked harder. Mother coughed red into a linen and pointed at Father as if he were a bad student. "Say it," she rasped. "Swear." He didn't. Not that time. That night he found me in the shed and whispered the numbers that live in my head like fence staples. Northern Pacific 312 northbound. Freight at 045. Inspection at Medford. 10 minutes on the siding. If I say run, you run, he said. If I don't show, you go anyway. He pressed a folded scrap into my palm. Nolan, yard, owes me. He had traded his father's watch for the debt. Men make banks out of favors when money is watched by mean eyes. The deathbed order came like weather. The house went still enough to hear kerosene burn. Mother propped herself up, more bones than woman, and tried to stand on law she'd made herself. "Repeat it," she told Father. He didn't. Victor's hand twitched. Ruthie's mouth opened, then shut. Dr. Collins stared at his bag like it might answer. Mother reached too far, and the cough broke her in half. Father grabbed the lamp and let it fly. It cracked against Victor's chest with a sound like ice splitting. "Run," Father said. He didn't shout. He said it like a line you write once and never cross out. We ran. Pine needles made a hush. He knew the ditch where the fence sagged and the path where the mill boys cut to the spur. Past the trestle, the yard opened in grays. A man in a cap, Nolan, looked at Father and didn't look at me. That's all the help we asked for. We climbed a ladder into a hay car that smelled like old sun. Father wedged us behind bales and set my back to the slats. "Breathe slow," he said. He put the coat over my knees and the folded scrap in my pocket like it could keep heat. Light swept. Boots thudded the floor and stopped where our breath gathered. The beam slid on, lazy as a cat. The car clanked and moved. Timberfall backed away like a lie you decide not to tell again. At Medford, the car sighed onto a siding. Voices below. Clipboard, joke, spit. Someone said, "Check the hay," and somebody else said, "After coffee." And that is why I believe in coffee. We rode to Portland with straw in our hair and a plan like pins in a map. Station, east doors, alley with the loose downspout, bus depot 2 blocks south, any destination that isn't where men expect. Portland held more eyes than a sermon. On the platform under the clock, Victor stood with a borrowed hat and a deputy pin clipped low inside his jacket. He scanned faces the way men reading poker hands scan wrists. Father saw him and never looked again. We slipped left, then down, then out where the porters smoked. We walked like people who owed no one anything and kept our heads like ceilings. At the bus depot, Father traded steel, his wedding band, for 2 worn tickets to Eugene and the kind of clerk who can ignore a whole family if the price is right. We sat near a column and counted to 300 twice. When the bus wheezed, we boarded with a paper sack for luggage and our names in our mouths where they couldn't be stolen. I will not tell you I was brave. I will tell you we didn't stop. Eugene meant a room above a hardware store that sold nails by the scoop and didn't ask what we were to each other. Father stacked pallets at a wholesaler for cash under the counter. I wiped glass at a diner and memorized exit doors. News traveled on shoes. A logger from back home swore he'd seen Victor at Union Station asking questions and buying answers in coffee. We packed 1 hour later. Father sewed our coins into hem tape and carried our spare socks like they were deeds. On the Greyhound South, a woman with a hat full of pins snored like thunder, and outside the glass, the pines thinned to hills with brown ribs. Maybe you wanted a speech. I don't give them. We moved. We wrote nothing we couldn't burn. We didn't say safe, because that word makes liars out of rooms. Mother died 3 days after we left. I know because a boilerplate obituary reached a cousin of a friend, and the cousin ran a finger under the line that said, "Devoted teacher," like it could cut. There was no line for the order she tried to nail to our lives. Orders rot if you drag them through enough towns. That was the start. Not the worst, not the end, the start. You think you can't outrun people with louder voices and nicer shoes. You can, if you run early and keep your pockets light. Next came the deputy with the wrong question, the cousin with the right map, and a town that minded its own business just enough. But that's part 2. For now, write this in your pocket notebook if you've got one. When a house turns mean, you don't debate it. You cut the lights, count to 1, and go. Part 2. We didn't plant roots. We stitched miles. Eugene to Grant's Pass on a bus that rattled like loose teeth. Then a ride in the back of a produce truck over Siskiyou, where lettuce froze and our ears burned. Father introduced us as Hank and Marty Lane, simple as swapping hats. He took whatever paid cash, stacking sacks, patching pallets, humping crates until his shirt went dark at the back. I cleared plates at a lunch counter off Pine Street, where the pies were lopsided, and the owner liked anyone who worked twice as fast as they talked. Names travel. So do uncles with time and grudges. Third week out, a logger I recognized from Timberfall came in for coffee, saw my father's hands, and turned pale the way honest men do when they spot danger they didn't ask for. He's in Portland asking, then south, he muttered, eyes on the counter. New hat, old temper. Victor had found a deputy willing to be useful and a rumor about a minor in peril. That phrase buys a lot of doors. We stayed an hour ahead by counting like carpenters. Father kept a pocket ledger, tiny figures, tough paper, wages in, beds paid, miles between towns. I noted faces, men who stared too long, women who listened too hard, the station clerk who turned our way when a man in a church Buick rolled past. I learned the art of leaving before we became a story. Redding tried to hold us. A room above a feed store, one window, one iron bed. Father found mill work on the river. I scrubbed at Dot's Grill and learned the register. On Friday, 2 men sat where the morning sun hit slow. One wore a county tie, cheap and knotted wrong. The other wore Victor's aftershave without the decency to hide it. They ordered bacon and waited for someone to notice them waiting. I carried plates and didn't blink. Miss, the tie said too friendly, you seen a man named Samuel Hart? Tall, quiet, foreman hands. Might be traveling with a girl calls herself Lane. Don't know a Hart, I said, pouring coffee to the line and not a drop more. Father had drilled it. No anger, no jokes, no extra information. Keep sentences short and verbs honest. We left that afternoon. Dot boxed us a chicken and slipped me a grocery ledger from 2 years back to use as a notebook. Men like that never wash their own cups, she said. Go where folks do. The bus station sat under a clock that never kept the same time twice. Victor's hat appeared across the floor, brim low, deputy 2 steps behind. Father didn't look. He guided me to the side exit by the pinball machine, left under a sign that said no smoking and smelled like smoke. Outside, the alley spat us into a loading dock where a trucker named Sal was tying down crates of oranges bound for Red Bluff. Father handed him a rolled bill and a truth. Man behind us wants my child, he said. He's not entitled. Sal didn't ask for a biography. He flipped the tarp and pointed. Duck. We rode on fruit and diesel, and a driver who sang radio choruses wrong and loud. At a turnoff, he let us out with a handshake and a watch the rails, which is trucker for good luck. We crossed to a whistle stop called Hooker and caught a local that stopped for cows if they asked nice. By Bakersfield, the air tasted like pennies. Father got a night shift at a packing house, and I took a day shift at the St. Clair. No saint about it, just a lady with a ledger and a rule board. She paid cash and didn't like law at her counter. Not because I'm criminal, she told me, because I'm busy. Her name was Alma Fox, and she could hear trouble by the way a door hinge sighed. First time you've read the back of a door and known it meant safety? You remember the grain of the wood. Victor made it down the valley with that deputy who wore paper like armor. They walked into the St. Clair with afternoon dust on their cuffs and stood where men stand when they expect attention. Alma kept polishing a sugar dispenser until she could see their collars in it. Deputy flashed a badge. "We're looking for a runaway under improper influence." Alma didn't blink. "Everyone here is overcooked and self-governed," she said, then turned her back, which is a heavy thing to do to a badge in daylight. When they pushed the talk, she rang a bell that wasn't for food. A man from the union office 2 doors down, Earl Hanley, shoulders like 2x10s, came through the side door wiping grease from his palms. "Problem?" he said, the way a closed gate says, "problem." The deputy remembered paperwork that needed filing. Victor left a card. V. Hart, Family Affairs. Alma burned it under a spoon and said, "Next time, you bring a judge." Then she looked at me. "You have a map?" I did. "Good," she said. "Draw a circle where you're not." We moved again. East this time. Earl knew a man who ran a gypsum plant near the state line. He stamped father onto a crew list under the name Henry Lane, $5 less than fair, but money that didn't ask questions. I was niece, then book girl, then just Martha. After a week, because people use the name you answer to. I learned stores faster than streets. In Needles, a 5-and-dime clerk sold me 2 index card boxes and looked away while I copied every ration of our days. Dates, shifts, pay, rent, bus stubs, plate numbers, people who said their names twice like they were practicing. Paper holds you steady when voices try to shove you. Victor found us there too, but slower and angrier. He came at dusk with the same deputy, planted himself by the plant fence, and told a story so clean you could eat off it. Grieving widow, unstable man, corrupted youth. Men love a story that flatters their badges. He got an escort and a lantern line to our door. Father met them with a folder thick enough to be persuasive. Hire slip, crew schedule, 2 money orders to the rooming house, a church bulletin marked with 3 Sundays, and a note from the plant medic who'd iced his wrist after a spill. "You got a warrant?" Father asked, voice low. "You got a judge who's seen this?" He didn't say, "my child." He didn't say, "your sister." He said, "this," and set the weight of our paper on the porch rail. The foreman stepped in beside him, hat off. "Lane shows up and shuts up," he told the deputy. "If you're pulling him, write me a replacement on county letterhead while you're here. Working men can be a wall if you give them a reason." The deputy stalled. Victor hissed. They left dust. Ruthie sent a letter to a P.O. box Alma helped me rent. It came inside a church newsletter, margin dotted in a pattern. I laid it under light and counted. Every 5th dot spelled, "Don't trust Collins." Victor had found a doctor for his paperwork and his conscience. I filed the note and took a breath that didn't taste like rust. We couldn't live on dodges. Father wanted an end, not an orbit. Alma had a cousin at the county seat, a clerk named Dent who knew which judges read and which ones liked the sound of their own hands banging wood. "If you want to stop running," Alma said, "you need a piece of paper that barks back." Dent told us what to bring. We brought too much. Birth record copy. Nolan's wife found it in an old ledger she kept to remember babies and casseroles. School card from Timberfall, smudged but legible. Affidavits from Earl and the foreman. Receipts, rent stubs, shifts, nickels, nicknames. We stacked our life on his desk like a short fence. He filed an emergency petition that said ugly things in tidy language: undue influence, attempted coerced union, third-party threats. He stapled our stack to the front and tagged a hearing for Tuesday, soon enough that Victor couldn't change counties on us. Then he made a copy of everything and told me to take it to a friend at the paper. "Not for printing," he said. "For a safe drawer. Newspaper men lock what they love." Victor didn't wait. He arrived Monday with a different deputy and a letter from Dr. Collins on fine stock. Concerns for the girl's mental stability, grief disorder, temporary protective placement recommended. It read like a sermon and stank like a ditch. Alma opened the door and let him finish every flourish. When he tipped the letter at my face, she took it with tongs and slid it into a bag labeled Exhibit. "See you in court," she said, and didn't give him the satisfaction of a door slam. Court smelled like floor wax and old paper. Judge Mays wore tired eyes and good shoes. Dent spoke in nouns and dates. Father spoke in sentences that could be measured: where, when, who, how much. I spoke 12 lines and no adjectives. Alma sat in the back like a rock on a hill. Victor's deputy waved Collins's letter like a flag. The judge read it twice, asked why a physician who wasn't present was diagnosing from a county away, then laid the page down as if it had tried to bite him. Mays granted the order. No contact from Victor or any agent, no interference, no removals without a warrant signed in blue ink in his own hand. He wrote that part slow. He also requested Dr. Collins appear on Friday with his records, and he underlined appear. Dent smiled with half his mouth. We walked out with a paper that finally barked. Alma folded it once, slid it into my ledger, and patted the cover like a shoulder. "This is a doorstop," she said. "Set it under the world and keep the world from closing." Night fell. We didn't celebrate. We checked the porch, the street, the corner where men like to wait. Father brewed coffee in a dented percolator and counted our luck by sips. I copied the case number on 3 cards and hid them 3 different places. Victor didn't come that night. He'd be back. People who like control don't retire. They reload. But now we had something that answered when they knocked. Now when someone said family, I could show them a judge who had defined it with ink instead of opinions. By dawn, I'd mounted the order on cardstock and slid it into the top of my box. That sound you hear when paper meets cardboard and fits. That's hope, trimmed to size. Friday would bring a doctor with clean cuffs and dirty letters. We had questions and exhibits, and a judge who underlined verbs. We were done being a rumor. We were a file. Part 3. Friday came in crisp and mean. Dent handed me a stack of subpoenas like playing cards and said, "We're running a fast break. Keep your feet." Alma parked us 2 blocks from the courthouse so Victor couldn't count our tires. Collins arrived first, cufflinks bright, hair combed with mathematics. He brought a leather folder and a speech. Victor swept in second with a new deputy and a smirk that had seen easy wins. I felt for the order in my ledger the way a soldier pats a magazine. Judge Mays didn't waste vowels. "Doctor, you've written grave opinions from a county away. Show your basis or swallow your ink." Collins clicked open his folder. Letters from educators, a pastor's concern, mother's statements. Dent didn't stand. He simply lifted a page. "The mother is deceased," he said. "These statements are undated carbons with no signature lines. Pastor's letter lacks letterhead." He slid them to the clerk, then laid down our copy stack. School records with stamps, wage slips, the medic note from the plant, affidavits with real ink and phone numbers. Mays turned to Collins. Chart notes? Confidential, Collins tried. Then your letter is too, Mays said, and pushed it aside as if it had become sticky. Dent nodded to the back. The door opened and in came Nolan from Pine Ridge, hat in hand, coat clean for court. He testified plain. The night train, the guard's log, the watch my father traded. Then Dot from Reading by phone. 2 men with badges and lies. 1 card burned under a spoon. Earl stepped forward and said union words like witnessed, threat, intimidation on premises. None of it flowery, all of it with dates. Collins tried to rescue his page with a phrase, reactive hysteria. Alma coughed a laugh into her sleeve. I lifted my ledger and read 12 lines. No adjectives. About house rules that choked air. About tickets bought and torn. About a shed and a lamp and a door we finally used. I ended with the line Dent had taught me. I am asking the court to protect ongoing lawful living. Victor stood finally. Your Honor, this is theater by a runaway and a disgruntled foreman. I am the only blood adult left to ensure propriety. Mays folded his hands. Blood is not a license. He looked at the deputy. Do you have a sworn removal order? The deputy touched an empty pocket. We have Dr. Collins's letter, which now has the weight of lint, Mays said. He signed 3 copies slow. Permanent no contact against Victor, and agents known or unknown, referral of Collins to the medical board, instruction to the sheriff to investigate harassment. He handed Dent the originals and tapped the desk twice. If anyone touches this girl without my ink, I'll teach contempt to people who think they've already met it. We stepped into the hallway with paper that finally growled. Victor's mouth worked, but found no consonants. He pivoted hard and shouldered through the front doors. That's when the elevator dinged and Trouble stepped out wearing perfume and pearls. Collins' office manager with a box clutched like a life preserver. I'm late, she whispered. I saw your notice go up on the board. She set the box on a bench and opened it to a rain of index cards and carbon slips. On top, a ledger marked Supportive Statements, Template. Inside, blanks for dates, fill-in lines for community concerns, a stamped signature plate that didn't belong to any pastor I've ever met. Dent's eyes cooled 2 more degrees. Chain it, he told the clerk. We sealed the lid with evidence tape that squeaks when it bites. The manager handed me a Polaroid, edges cracked. Victor on Collins' porch in August, shaking hands under a sign that read, Family Services. Behind them, Uncle Herman, half shadow in the doorway. Why bring this to us? Alma asked. Because they told me to lie when the board called, she said. I like my license? Mays called us back in, reopened the record, stapled the photo, ordered the sheriff to pick up Herman for questioning, and told Victor he could either sit or be sat. He sat badly. We didn't linger. Alma split us like a river. Father with Earl to the plant, me with her to the paper. The editor, a man who smelled like ink and deadlines, slid our packet into a steel cabinet and spun the dial. You ever need to prove what you've already proved, he said. Come spin this backwards. On the street, a sedan idled wrong. Alma saw it the way a cat sees a hawk. Left, she said, and we were moving before the driver could decide whether to be obvious. We cut through a hardware store, Earl's cousin, and out the freight door. Alma handed me keys. Truck in the alley. Meet Dent at the St. Clair. If you're followed, don't be heroic. Be gone. I drove like I'd learned on tractors. No hesitation, no fear of gears. In the mirror, the sedan appeared, then blinked off when a bus coughed smoke between us. I hit the corner, slid into the St. Clair's shadow, and rolled the truck deep under the eave. Inside, Dent had set up camp at Table 3 with a sheriff's sergeant I didn't know. He stamped copies of the order with a portable seal. Thunk, twist, lift. Alma arrived through the kitchen, flour on her sleeve from not baking. "Herman?" she asked. "Picked up at a boarding house, 2 counties over," the sergeant said. "Had a suitcase and a note with your street circled twice." He looked at me with something like respect. "You did right. You wrote it down." We thought we were done for the day. We weren't. The St. Clair's bell rang, twice flat, and Alma went still. "Back," she said. We moved through the service door as the front door opened to Collins, flushed and furious, and Victor with that deputy again. "You cannot humiliate a physician," Collins barked. "I will sue this establishment." Alma wiped her hands on a towel as if he were a spill. "You'll order coffee or you'll order a lawyer," she said. "Either way, you're leaving a tip." Dent walked out with the sergeant and the seal. He didn't posture. He simply held the order at chest height and said, "Last call." The deputy read it this time, the whole thing, and put his hands up as if to show he owned nothing. Collins reached for the paper. Alma slapped his fingers with a spoon. The room laughed once, quiet and sharp. Victor stared at me over the counter. For years that look had made the world shrink. It didn't now. Between us stood dates, stamps, names, a judge, a clerk, a union man, a diner that knew which door to lock. Feelings hadn't saved us. Forms had. They left under escort. The bell stopped ringing. Alma poured black coffee and slid the cup to me like a medal. "You're through the doorway," she said. "Now build a house." That night we did the dull work that keeps bright victories from fading. We filed receipts, logged conversations, sent certified copies to 3 addresses, and tucked a fresh set into a church hymnal Alma swore nobody ever opened between Sundays. Father fixed the percolator. I stitched the torn corner of the order with clear tape that catches light like a tiny river. In the morning, the paper ran a small column on page 2. Court curbs harassment. Doctor referred to board. No names, no melodrama. Just the record doing what we begged it to do. Exist. We still watched corners and listened for bad engines, but the chase had slowed. People had to sign for their malice now. Victor's kind hates pens more than prisons. 2 weeks later, a letter came from the medical board. Acknowledgement of receipt, docket number, Dr. P. Collins to appear. I copied the number to 3 cards and put one under my pillow like a child with a tooth. "I think we can stay," Father said, steaming mugs on the table. Hands finally steady. "Staying is a job," I answered, and opened my ledger to a clean page. Let's get to work. Char Part 4. The morning after the headline, Alma traded me a badge lanyard and a coffee. "Today we turn rumors into routing numbers," she said. Dent slid a legal pad across the diner table. On top, a list. Plates, P.O. boxes, supply houses, courier codes from Collins's box. Jobs, track, copy, pull. First stop, DMV Annex, back room that smelled like toner. Alma flashed her letterhead. The clerk rolled a chair with a squeak and typed like thunder. 3 plates from Polaroids. 2 belonged to Community Outreach Partners. a nonprofit with a downtown mail drop. The third was leased to Radner Logistics. I wrote exactly as printed, no abbreviations. Next, the mail drop. The attendant, bored and brave, told us Box 214 was paid in money orders signed P. Rook. He slid the ledger across when Alma laid down a subpoena. I traced the payments back 6 months, noted dates, photocopied the receipts, and tucked them in my ledger like seeds. Dent called from the courthouse. Bank order cleared. Meet me at County First at 11. We did. The bank manager wore a tie loud enough to plead the fifth. Dent handed over the order. We sat while a printer coughed out statements for community outreach partners. Out went checks to Collins's clinic, Radner and Kelly Ridge Ministries. In came donations clustered after Sunday. The math was ugly and addictive. Alma circled 3 deposits that matched dates on Collins's support letters. Kickbacks labeled as charity, she said. They think God signs everything. We drove to Radner's yard on the county edge. Trailers, a prefab office, a coyote trotting like it paid rent. The dispatcher saw the subpoena and tried to sprout wings. Alma clipped him to the chair with her stare. Which routes run after midnight? He broke in under a minute. Hospital Annex, Kelly Ridge Retreat, School District Storage, and Farm Lane out past Poplar Creek. He didn't like the last one. I didn't either. Belson met us there in his city truck, the kind with more dents than paint. He handed me a roll of blue painter's tape. You label everything you touch. They can't wash off handwriting. We followed the farm lane. Ruts, corn stubble, a stand of poplars knitting the sky. Through them, a steel rectangle with no charm and less soul. Not today, Alma said. We need a key. No one can wiggle. She pocketed the coordinates, backed us out slow, and pointed upriver to an easier target. Collins's clinic after hours. We didn't kick doors. Dent arrived with an administrative inspection order that read like a sermon. Collins stood in his own waiting room pretending not to sweat. Alma put gloves on, broke the seal on his locked med cabinet, and whistled. Sample vials labeled in tidy print, a log with initials PR again, and cold packs stamped KRM. Transport chain? I asked the nurse. Courier picks up at 9, she said, eyes on the floor. Radner? Alma said. She nodded once, small and tired. We boxed the samples with the clerk's chain of custody stickers. White, red stripe, signature line. I wrote times to the minute. Dent took the logbook. Alma took Collins's pen when he reached to correct an entry. No edits, she said. History's allergic to whiteout. At 9 sharp, the courier arrived. Boyish cap, cooler by the handle, forms on a clipboard. He stepped in, saw uniforms, and tried to reverse evolutions. Belson blocked the door with a trash can. Stay, he said, like to a dog. We'll check your lunch. The cooler held bracelets in clear sleeves and 2 syringes in foam. One sleeve read, J. Harrow, destination KR Annex. I photographed each sleeve next to my watch, then slid them back like dealing cards in reverse. You're going to take this to the right place, Alma told him, only we'll be behind you with lights off. Denton stayed to finish the inventory. Alma rolled with me in the Crown Vic, Belson a car back. The courier took a long route through sleepy blocks, the paper plant, the water tower, then a turn I knew we'd hate. Poplar Creek. Same lane, same trees, same steel. He tapped the horn twice. The chain dragged. A panel truck edged out as if they'd choreographed it weeks ago. A man in a disposable cap signed the courier's sheet without looking up. Alma scratched her palm with a Sharpie. 9:47 gate. 9:51, swap. 9:53 out. She doesn't write poetry. She writes clocks. We didn't bite yet. Alma let them finish the dance, then tailed the courier back to town and pulled him soft behind the laundromat. She kept her tone grocery store pleasant. Name on your paycheck? Radner. Temp, he said. Don't know anything. You know someone named Rook? I said. He froze the way deer do when they smell a fence. He does routing. Tonight he routed you into a felony, Alma said. You can be a witness or a defendant. Choose with your mouth. He chose. Rook texted the late runs from a burner. A woman named Nix cleared problems and stopped questions. He'd seen Victor there twice, last month, counting bundles like a banker. We wrote his words down as he said them. He signed the page with a hand that shook like the first day of trout season. Go home, Alma told him. Turn your phone off. Show up when we call. Back at the station, Dent had eaten 2 pencils to stubs. Bank sent a supplementary file, he said. Transfers to a state contractor's shell. KRM shows as a retreat. He handed me the printouts. I might not read Greek, but I read Griff's. If we search, it'll stick, I said. If we wait, they'll bleach it. Alma called the night judge. Probable cause? He asked. Courier testimony, clinic samples, bank paths. A locked steel building in a cornfield taking deliveries in the dark, she said. Add your reports, he said. Then page me again. We worked the last hour like bricklayers. Belson diagrammed the yard and camera angles from the trees. I mapped the supply chain from box 214 to wristband sleeve in 5 clean steps. Dent stapled until the packet was a spine. Alma pressed her thumbprint in ink beside her signature. A superstition and a promise. The fax spat the judge's first authorization. Tracker on Rook's SUV. Belson slid under the chassis in the station lot, clicked 1 black turtle to the frame, and rolled out with gravel in his hair, but a grin. If he sneezes, we'll hear it. 2 hours later, ping. Rook moved. The dot took him not to the clinic, not to the barn, but to a river house with a wraparound porch and 2 empty rocking chairs. The porch light blinked twice. Another car arrived, Victor's. He went inside carrying a banker's box. Record plate, time, duration, Alma said. We did. When Rook left, he carried nothing. Victor stayed. This is the money side, Dent said. The barn is the body. Tomorrow we take both, Alma answered. We didn't sleep. We split tasks like a harvest. I pre-filled evidence labels with case numbers. Belson tuned the portable generator kill switch from a lawnmower part and luck. Dent drafted the search warrant language in verbs a rookie couldn't misunderstand. Alma wrote 1 line on her palm. Lights, locks, lungs. At dawn, I walked to the diner and mailed 3 envelopes, copies of the bank trees, the clinic log, and the courier statement, to the newspaper safe, to the county clerk, and to a P.O. box in Laramie that only I knew. Paper doubles are lifeboats when boats sink. Back in the squad room, the warrants came through in squiggly thermal fax. Steel building, Collins server, Rook's devices, River House. Alma clipped each to a clipboard with a bulldog clip, passed them around like communion, and said, No speeches. We go. We count. We leave with the truth in boxes. We rolled at 18:0. Dust took the road and laid it behind us like a ribbon. I checked my pen twice, then a 3rd time. Belson tapped the generator off switch. Alma touched the Sharpie on her palm. Dent patted the warrants. The plan fit in 2 sentences and a pocket. Poplars ahead. Steel to the right. A camera blinked red. Belson killed the hum with one pull. Night got quiet enough to hear lies. Now, Alma said. We went. Part 5. Belson killed the generator and the steel box exhaled like a stopped heart. One red camera eye blinked twice, then died. Alma tapped her Sharpie line. Lights. Locks. Lungs. And slid to the door, warrant folded in her pocket like a blade. I took left, Belson right. Dent and a trooper stacked behind us with the kit tubs, evidence tape, Faraday sleeves, a tackle box of seals. The door had a keypad slick with glove powder. I tried the courier code we'd lifted at the clinic, 0518, and it chirped green. A religion of the lazy. Inside, a short hall to a clean room. Vents whispered. LED strips flattened color. Stainless tables, trays, a line of blue crates I could have mistaken for school lunch coolers. Alma called out with parade ground calm. Sheriff's office, search warrant. No echoes, good insulation. First room, an intake bench, 3 clipboards, a scale. Belson skimmed the forms. Weight, age range, destination code. No names, only bracelets. I photoed each sheet against my watch. Timestamps make liars swallow hard later. Second room, a workstation running a purge timer. 06. I yanked the power and popped the side panel. 2 NVMe sticks winked under a heatsink. Into a shield bag, label, initials. Paper beats delete keys. A figure in scrubs stepped out from behind a curtain, hands lifted high. I just do logs, she said, voice steady from practice. Alma nodded at a chair. Then log what's about to happen. Sit. The woman sat. We found the lungs in the third space. 3 gurneys, blankets to chins, wrist sleeves tagged with courier codes, and a stamped bird. Pupils wide, skin cool. One girl flinched at the light and whispered, "Cold room," like it was a noun with teeth. The cold room door wore a rubber sweep and a keypad. Same code. Airbit. Metal racks with vials. Prepped syringes in foam. Bracelet sleeves sorted by route. A clipboard ledger with tidy columns and initials, PR. Again. I slid the whole board into an evidence bag, pressed the seal flat, and wrote my minute and second. Alma keyed her mic. Denton, bring the medic. He came with an EMT and his warrant like a passport. IV bags, saline, blankets. We kept the girls breathing and the paper breathing harder. From the hallway, tires hissed on dirt. Belson peeked through a gap cut in the blackout film. 2 vehicles, panel truck and a dark SUV. 4 bodies. He pocketed his grin. We've got company. Alma parceled work with one breath. Dent, hold the entrance. Belson, stay on the generator. LM, bracelets, photos, IV times. Trooper, cones dark at the lane mouth. Scrubs, where's your server closet? The scrubs woman pointed at a false wall panel under the desk. Magnets, not screws. Behind it, a tower with a hot swappable cage and a fiber modem glued to a Raspberry Pi. Belson thunked the kill switch on the UPS. The fans spun down like geese landing. I bagged drives, labeled ports, and taped each cable to its twin on the cage with blue painter's tape. Matchmaking now saves cussing later. Shadows crossed the bay door. The panel truck bumped the lip. A voice that had never hustled said, "Let's not make a show." Rook. He wore field boots that still had store tags creased into them. The SUV door opened on a woman with a tight braid and a clipboard. Had to be Nick's. Eyes doing arithmetic on exits. Alma's tone didn't climb. Warrants on the table. Palms where I can count them. The trooper cracked one cone, single flash, and killed it. Silhouette check. One by the bumper, one by the crates, one hugging the poplars, Rook in the open pretending he owned the moon. "Consultants will clear this," he said, phone in hand. Dent lifted his paper until it filled Rook's sky. "Try her," he said. "Ask which side of the bench she's sitting tonight." Rook's thumb hovered. Nix didn't wait. She flicked her wrist. The bumper man moved. Belson bounced a socket across the concrete. The clatter pulled eyes. Alma stepped in, took the bumper man's wrist, rotated, and put him on the deck like she'd been saving that move for a holiday. The trooper scooped the crate shadow. Dent shouldered the poplar hugger into the pallets. I told Nix down, like it was a verb that paid taxes. Zip ties made their ratchety hymn. "None of this says child," Rook tried, chin up like a weather vane. Dent tapped a bracelet sleeve against his chest. "This does." I held up the ledger bag and the drives. "And these will translate." The medic called from the gurneys. "Benzo mix. Lines are in. Ready for transport." Alma pointed the EMT toward the loading lip. "Use their truck," she said. "We'll drive it to the annex with your lights and our paperwork." Scrubs made herself useful. "There's a kick plate under the third rack," she said, voice lower now. Behind it, one more notebook, neater than a hymnal. Batch numbers, destinations, courier codes, and a list labeled stipends. Names next to amounts. First on the page, Collins. Second, KRM treasurer. Third, a county procurement officer we both knew by his golf shirts. I didn't think. I bagged, sealed, wrote. Evidence weight is heavier when it names people you wave at in supermarkets. Sirens came soft through trees. The county cars, the state. No lights yet. Alma took Rook by the elbow and walked him to the white board like a schoolmarm. "Read," she said. He stared at route times and bird stickers and tried a smile that didn't fit his face. Behind him, Nix kept her gaze on the drives like gravity might lift them. State rolled in. Clean lines, clean forms. We swapped our tape for theirs, signed seals, shot photos of our own signatures next to theirs. Belson retagged the door with evidence strips in an X, wrote the time across the hinge. "Neat enough for a Christmas card," he said. On the tailgate, I logged each bracelet sleeve with watch time, medic time, and Alma's Sharpie time. 3 clocks, 1 story. June, the girl with the steady eyes, caught my sleeve. "Is it real?" she managed. "It's written," I said, and tucked my cardigan around her forearms so the world couldn't see the barcode like a brand. Back inside, the trooper pulled a crate from a back bay. Behind it, a safe. Not bank big, but not toy. Dent slid me the stethoscope. I'm no burglar, but a safe that's opened 100 times opens like a habit. 4 minutes, 2 clicks, and the wheel broke soft. Inside, prepaid phones, 5 passports with bad haircuts, a brick of cash, and a thumb drive in a velvet ring box like a joke someone rich would tell. I bagged the lot and stuck the ring box label on with my handwriting big as a billboard. Rook saw the cash and couldn't help himself. "That's payroll," he said. "Document it," Alma answered. "Then explain the rings you buy with flash drives." We rolled the girls out last. No rush, no heroics. The medic called out vitals. I wrote them on the sleeve margins, ink on plastic, still legible if it rained. The panel truck's cargo light made halos where we didn't need poetry. As we sealed the steel door for the final time, my hands started to shake. Not fear. Relief looking for a chair. Alma pressed the pen into my fingers. "Sign across the tape," she said. I did. Twice. then took a photo of my own name. Ruth would have liked that part best. Dawn lifted over the poplars like someone turned the dimmer. We convoyed to town. Ambulance, panel truck, 2 cruisers, our Crown Vic at the rear with the Ledger riding shotgun in my lap. At the annex, I did the last thing Ruth ever taught me. Turned a night into lines a clerk could read. Times, plates, who touched what, which seal number went where. Then I walked my envelope of copies to the night judge's drop and slid it through the slot until the brass kissed skin. By 9, the press trucks would find the tape and the cones, and a sheriff who didn't do speeches. Before that, Alma poured coffee into paper cups and pushed one into my hand. "We're not done," she said. "I know," I said, "but we've started." Part 6. By sunrise, the story had legs. 2 cruisers blocked the lane. State taped the steel door. Vultures and windbreakers sniffed for quotes. Alma lifted her chin and gave them none. "Affidavits will speak," she said, and turned back to the work that mattered. Counting, sealing, moving. At the annex, the girls got rooms with windows and nurses who called them by their names, not bird codes. June slept with my cardigan over her forearms. The EMT left her a note of vitals like a bookmark. I set up a folding table by the soda machine and made a paper city. Receipts, photos, drive logs, bracelet sleeves, all rubber-banded and tabbed. If chaos wants a fight, it gets a clerk with a spine. Before 9, the first punch landed. A man from the governor's office arrived in a suit too new for gravel, waving a letterhead and talking jurisdictional cooperation. Alma poured him coffee and stood him in front of our board. "Cooperate by not losing my evidence," she said. He took 2 steps back and called someone he addressed as Chief. The call didn't save him from Dent's chain of custody lecture. Nothing saves anyone from that. Belson and I imaged drives at a pace that would have warmed my old accountant's heart. One stick gave up its passwords to the obvious, 0518 again. Pruitt's ego was the gift that kept gifting. Folders bloomed. Roots, stipends, liaison. Inside liaison sat emails with tidy signatures, Rook's chief of staff, a consultant named Nix who billed by the rivulet, a treasurer who preferred cash. One PDF listed community partners beside amounts. My stomach dropped at 2 of the names. Alma took the printout like it was a hot plate and slid it under her not-for-press stack. By noon, retaliation found its shoes. A Facebook page with a flag banner declared Alma a kidnapper of healthy teens, and me a fabricator with a typewriter. The page had been made 20 minutes earlier and sported 1,000 shares. Dent shrugged, called the AG's comms guy, and taped a press packet inside the annex door at eye level. 7 pages, footnotes, seal numbers. Paper beats pixels if you let it. Pruitt tried an airport exit. State took him off gate 3 with a suitcase full of scrubs and one passport that claimed he'd been born in Laredo. He wasn't. He lawyered up with a man who wore an $8,000 watch and a smirk. The smirk faded when we handed him a copy of Stipend's PDF with his client's initials repeated like a drum cadence. Night fell mean. The clinic's backlot belched smoke at 2 a.m. Someone lit the biohazard bins and hoped flame would eat timelines. Belson was already halfway there with a water can. The volunteer boys rolled up in tees and boots. Alma stared at the orange and said nothing. Firemen doused, peeled, and found. Melted plastic, a safe that had dropped 2 shelves and split, and inside, a ledger bag with my initials across the seal line. The heat had browned the tape to caramel. My ink was still black. Ruth would have smiled into her apron. Day 2 brought the hospital gambit. A woman with a contractor badge tried to walk June out under the word transfer. New nurse, night shift, almost let her. I'd seen a trick like that in 61. So the annex had a rule on index cards by every bed. 2-word code only June and staff knew. No code, no wheels. The woman didn't have it. Security took her clipboard. Alma took her name. I took a photo of her shoes. Mud tells you where people have been. The mud was the red kind you only get on the east frontage. Belson checked the frontage cameras we'd quietly borrowed from the feed store. Plate caught. Alma whistled low. Denton's grand jury clock started ticking. The DA wanted manageable charges. The AG wanted a headline. Alma wanted what would stick when the wind shifted. We fed them evidence by course. First the clean stuff, drives, bracelets, ledger, then the meat, emails, bank pulls, then dessert, safe contents, stipends list. Nix didn't show for her first interview. Her counsel sent a letter with 3 words that changed the weather. Proffer, queen for a day. She'd talk for a deal. Not because of conscience, consultants don't have those, but because jail has uniforms that don't flatter. Third morning, a deputy found a listening device in Alma's duty hat brim. It didn't get much. Alma doesn't monologue. We made a game of feeding it what we wanted heard. All evidence in vault at courthouse, combo 000000. At midnight, we watched a thin boy try that vault on a live-stream Dent's nephew set up with a camera hidden in a fern. The door never blinked. The boy did, when the trooper tapped his shoulder and said, "Friend, you've got the wrong 4 zeros." We didn't charge him. We wanted his phone. It led to a burner that led to a number labeled simply Rook. Rook did cable hits. He wore that field jacket again and said words like misunderstanding and pilot program and overzealous. Alma did 1 hit of her own. 7 minutes at the Rotary Club with a projector. She clicked through seals, signatures, times. "You elected me to count and to keep," she told the room. "Here's what I've counted. Here's what I'm keeping." When she finished, 3 men at the back didn't clap. I recognized their boots from the SUV. We weren't saints. We made mistakes. I mislabeled a sleeve with the wrong minute, caught it an hour later, crossed once, initialed, and wrote the correction without blush. Better a clean scar than makeup. Belson forgot to Faraday 1 phone for 10 minutes. The screen got a ping from KRM-MTG. We logged the lapse and moved on. Juries forgive human. They hate slick. June woke clearer on day 4. She asked for a comb and paper. I gave her both and a pen that writes through tears and greasy fingers. "Write dates," I said. "Not feelings. Names, rooms, smells, times." She filled 2 cards, front and back, neat print, no adjectives. When she finished, she looked older by a decade and steadier by a mile. On day 5, the church board issued a statement about prayerful reconsideration regarding a certain fund. On day 6, the county treasurer resigned for health reasons and moved to Florida without a forwarding address. On day 7, the grand jury returned true bills on 11 counts for Pruitt, 6 for Rook, 4 for Nix, and a curious 2 for a liaison officer whose wife posted on Facebook that her husband was a patriot. Facts are boring that way. They don't salute back. That night, Alma parked on my curb with pie in a foil pan and the look she gets when the road is about to turn. "You know this doesn't end at a verdict," she said. "I know," I said. Nothing worth ending does. I tucked the stipends list into a new envelope, wrote 3 copies of the same cover letter, and addressed them to 3 people who don't share coffee: a federal AUSA, the state auditor, and a reporter whose shoes are always dusty. Then I slid one more envelope into my freezer, behind the peas. Insurance doesn't spoil if you keep it cold. At midnight, thunder walked in from the range and shook my duplex like a big hand on an old shoulder. I boiled water, wrote a to-do list on an index card, and set it under the magnet on my fridge. Court, hospital, safe kids, servers. I added one more line Ruth would have written herself. Rest when you've earned it. The storm passed. My porch chair faced east. Dawn was an honest color. We'd started a thing that couldn't be unstarted. Tomorrow would ask us to keep our pens steady while the loud folks tried to sing off-key. That's fine. I've outlived louder. Part 7. Trials don't thunder. They grind. We sat 3 rows back with our notebooks, while defense counsel tried to turn smoke into weather. Pruitt in blue suit, Rook in county man plaid, Nix in silk that didn't wrinkle. The clerk swore witnesses until his voice rasped. Our evidence came in like freight. Seals first, then logs, then hands on keyboards walking the jury through folders named by fools. Roots, stipends, liaison. June read her cards without wobble. No adjectives. 12 dates, 4 rooms, the smell of alcohol wipes and orange cleaner. Jurors wrote like students who want the grade. Cross was bluster. Isn't it true you dislike my client? A lawyer asked Alma. I dislike sloppiness, she said. Your client left 3 ledgers. Belson diagrammed the network on a whiteboard, lines neat as fence wire. Denton traced the chain from bracelet to bin to box to vault. I did the boring magic, showed timestamps that married plates to paydays, stapled 3 phone pings to a stipend request with the same ZO518 baked in. Paper doesn't charm. It corners. Verdicts came on a wet Tuesday. Rook, guilty on conspiracy, unlawful restraint, evidence tampering. Pruitt, guilty on controlled substance, trafficking minors, records falsification. Nix, guilty on facilitation. Her proffer shaved years, but not consequence. 2 lieutenants from the clinic took pleas. The treasurer pleaded out and started singing for a lighter cell. Sentencing day, the judge spoke like a surveyor. Measured, dry, permanent. You built a system. So will we. Bars for most. Probation with cuffs for 1 nurse who had documented every doubt. The jury foreman cried only once. When June slipped him a thank you on a 3I5 that read, "You believed the boring stuff." Then came the aftershocks. The church cut ties. The governor's office shed a chief. A foundation sunsetted with a statement no one framed. A grandstanding pundit tried to make me the villain of a week. It lasted 2 days, the lifespan of a mayfly. We kept working. The girls scattered to safe places with doors that latch from the right side. June wanted algebra. We made that happen with a teacher who still grades in ink. Do I have to keep the bracelet pouch? She asked. Yes, I said, until it's just a story you pull out for somebody else. At the annex, we replaced the soda machine with shelves. Shampoo, notebooks, socks, hard candy that doesn't melt. Rules on the wall stayed short. Lights on, doors open, 2-word code, right dates. A new deputy learned to staple straight. I taught him the signature loop that doesn't smear when hands shake. He calls me Coach. I let him. Ruth's old address book had 2 numbers left. I called both. One belonged to a nurse now retired to a town with a single stoplight. I knew something stank, she said. I kept copies in my freezer. She mailed them on dry ice. The other number was dead. People run out of road. We honor them by walking the rest. Pruitt appealed. Lost. Rook filed a grievance against Alma. The panel dismissed with a sentence that could have been mine. Counting isn't cruelty. Nix wrote an op-ed from Minimum Security about systemic pressures. I clipped it, penciled the word nope, and filed it behind stipends like a pressed weed. One more shoe tried to drop in spring. A stranger with a bouquet knocked on my duplex door and called me by a name I used before Elk Ridge. The dog I don't own barked anyway. I spoke through the chain. He set the flowers down and walked to a car with plates from a state that doesn't share. Alma ran the number. A lobby shop paid for the rental. We tightened the circle. No big speeches, just smaller attack surfaces. Quiet wins. June graduated in a gym that smells like floor wax and popcorn. She walked past me in a blue gown with my cardigan folded in her arm like a flag. We didn't hug. We don't make her story anyone else's show. After, she handed me a tin of cookies and a notebook with graph paper. For your next mountain, she said. I slid an index card into the front. Her first court date, her last therapy copay, the day her ID stopped saying temporary. Pillars hold roofs. If you're wanting an ending like movies serve, you'll leave hungry. This is the ledger. Clinic shuttered. Equipment auctioned. Proceeds to a fund with rules and audits. County treasurer replaced. The new one sharpens pencils with a knife and posts weekly reports in 14-point font. Sheriff re-elected without billboards. Rotary still overcooks the chicken. Alma keeps her badge and her habit of answering no question she didn't ask first. I bought more jars. They hold beans, sugar, 3 sealed envelopes, and air. I still sit east in the morning. The street wakes slow. Milk truck, school bus, that feed store kid whose muffler needs mercy. Some afternoons a girl knocks with a story that burns her hands to hold. We don't cool it with talk. We write it down until it weighs enough to carry to a desk with a stamp. People ask if I hate them. The men with titles, the woman with invoices, the small fish who swam along because the water ran that way. I don't waste verbs. My job is numbers and names, ounces and dates. Revenge is a hot meal that leaves you hungry. Records feed you for years. Once late, I dreamed the cellar door from 1961. It opened on a room full of light and school desks. Ruth sat in the back with flour on her apron. The dog leaned on her boot. Alma took attendance. Belson fiddled with the projector. Denton taped the door latch just so. June sharpened a pencil and didn't look at the exit. I woke laughing, which isn't the worst way to test your heart. If you need a rule card, take mine. It's still 5 lines. Leave when midnight turns mean. Save proof, label true, cap tight. Learn which clerk stamps fast. Talk like you're writing a receipt. Let the slow machine work. Be its fuel, not its spark. That's all. I'm L.M. Porter of Elk Ridge. I keep ledgers. If you bring me chaos, I'll hand you columns the next morning. We moved one mountain, another waits. I've got pens enough.